Today on the Rebel's Edge, you're going to want to watch this one. We actually have a stock that put their name, a company put their name on a stadium, and they actually are starting to make money. This doesn't happen, folks. See us on the Rebel's Edge today. All right, here we are. There he is. I'm telling you, I've never seen John look better. He's got this big fluffy head of hair. He looks unbelievable. I mean, he looks like he's gone into the fountain of youth or something.
Stem cells.
Is it stem cells?
Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you what, we got a couple of companies. We got some biotech. We got a little bit of therapeutics. So, yeah, maybe we've got a little something. And maybe John's been dipping into it. Actually, this is Jared. Jared does an outstanding job for us. John is in some meetings today. So it's myself, Jared, and that's all you get. But that's all you can get. All right, let's jump into it, shall we? Or do you got anything you want to say ahead of time? Or
no, let's hit the macro minute.
All right, let's hit the macro minute. Well, we started off this week, and everybody's been looking forward to this week. Why, you say? Well, because a monstrous grouping of earnings. But on top of that, we also have the Fed. And that's why this is the macro minute, because when I see the Fed, and it's coming up Wednesday, what are they going to do? Take a look at that CME tool. That will give you some hints, because by percentages, it gives you the odds of what the Fed will do. We've got that Wednesday, and I think everybody's kind of on pause right now, Jared, waiting for the Fed, even though we've got all these earnings in front of us as well.
Sounds good. Let's hit the fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures. That isn't that bad. I wonder whose voice that is. Anyway, we're going to go. There he is, the man, the myth. Let me tell you something. We talk about crude all the time. I've been on nat gas. I've been on crude, and it's just been an incredible run. Well, crude has been on this run to the upside of late, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 3 steps forward, 1 step back. This is an entity that's gone from 70 to 77. Actually, last Friday, I believe we hit 78. If we didn't, we were really close. But nonetheless, it's been on a great path. Today, it's getting a little bit of a selling out there. And why is that? Well, this is one of the days where we've got the 1 step back. So we'll see what happens as we go through this week. But I got to tell you something, Jared. It's really interesting to see how all of this is unfolding before our very eyes, and how amazing the moves are in nat gas, in gold, in silver, in crude, all these various commodities and so forth. They're moving. That gold member, right?
Yeah.
Well, you got anything for futures, or is that good enough for you?
I love gold. No, that's good enough for me. Tell me what's going on with SoFi.
Well, and we teased this before, but let me tell you something. SoFi is really, really interesting, because this is a company, a lot of folks probably know about it. It's a big lender, fintech, they like to call it. And they have just been one of these companies that has struggled, believe it or not. I'm shocked, because they have their name on a stadium out in LA. And everybody who puts their name on a stadium seems to struggle, right? I mean, we've seen it time and time again, and it's just one of those things. And it's been a problem. Well, you can't put all of that on putting their naming rights are out there. But I can tell you this, SoFi has made a turn, and they've made a big turn. And today, it's a really nice move to the upside. When you're up 20+%, that's a really good day. And that's exactly what we're seeing on a SoFi. They had their first profit ever in Q4. So that, I think, is something very important. Their revenue was up 34%. And then when you look at the 500,000 new members that adds to the 7.5 million members, this is something that really does potentially have legs, Jared. I find it to be pretty interesting. What do you think about this particular name?
I think they keep trying to lend me money with junk mail that shows up in the mail. So that's I'm not biting though. Yeah, you're absolutely right about the stadiums though. I live right next to Wrigley Field, and that's the only time I ever think or hear about Wrigley is walking by the stadium.
There's a lot of truth to that. All right, and their deposits were up 19%. They just had an absolutely phenomenal quarter as well. McGrath Rent Group. Now, this is another one that's pretty interesting from the standpoint of they suddenly, out of nowhere, and this is a stock, if you take a look, folks, go back and look at the history of this stock, where it's been, where it is. This thing has absolutely gone from the very lower left to the very upper right. And that's the last of it because they got a $3.8 billion buyout. And believe me, they're going to jump on that because it puts them at all-time highs, 123.50. Stock up, not a huge percentage because, as I say, it's been moving this entire time, but it's up 10% today. And it's storage units and all of that. We all know, as Americans, do we have way too much stuff? Yes. And the proof of that is just look around and look at how many storage units are being built in cities and outside in the suburbs and everywhere else for everybody to store all their stuff because they can't fit in their house. What do you think of this name?
So I don't know anything about this name, but what is compelling to me is that John emailed us telling us to cover it. And if John's interested in it, then I'm interested in it. So John's bullish here. That's good enough for me.
Wow. I don't know. The expression brown nose is coming out. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding you, man. But here's the other thing, Jared. It averages 107,000 shares a day. When I last looked, which was probably 20 minutes, maybe a half hour ago, 1.7 million shares had transacted. So this thing is busy. People are moving around, and this is a really good number. And I'll tell you what, this business is still on fire. I don't think it's slowing down yet. I think the storage business is going to continue for longer than people think. All right, next.
Makes sense.
We're going to go to this one. Conan, excuse me, I'm going to probably mispronounce this, so I got to look at this closely. Conan Klajki now and / Phillips. This one's pretty interesting as well because they had the ventilator recall, right? And that's not ever going to be good. Recalls for anybody is never going to be good, but they reached an agreement with the FDA. That was good. And oh, by the way, they've got strong sales, strong growth, great free cash flow, and profitability. So even though the stock is down 5% today, it's trading around 21 and change. It's been as high as 24 and change in the last 52 weeks. I'd be inclined to take a look at this and say, well, the dark cloud is gone. They're being able to shift things around. And as they do that, they're putting up a great quarter. So this one's pretty intriguing for me. I almost called you Glenn. Sorry about that, Jared. But what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on Phillips or no?
Well, I found something. I'm looking at an article on MedTech Dive right now, just talking about the recall. It's recalling more than 15 million devices. This was in 2021. If they found that the polyester-based polyurethane foam used to soundproof the machines could break down, patients could inhale the foam particles, which could cause serious injury, according to the Food and Drug Administration, including irritation of the respiratory tract, nausea, and toxic and cancer-causing effects. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that all sounds terrible, but the good news for them at least is they've gone past that now multiple years and actually got the agreement with the FDA. So that seems like it's something that's in the rearview mirror. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. Vera Therapeutics is next. Another biotech. We love talking about these biotechs, but it's up about 8%. It's at 52-week highs. It's been on a great run. By the way, I'm looking. There is massive short interest in this name. So anything positive is always going to be a good thing for a company that has the shorts like this. 13 to 17% of the stock out there is short. Now, they do have a cash burn, but outside of that, you look at the fundamentals of the company, that all looks good. Doesn't always play out that way necessarily when you're talking about the biotech space, but in this particular case, it does. They had these phase 3 trials, the clinical trials. They seem to be going very, very good, and they're excited about the data right now, and that means they're just one step away now, Jared, from something that actually can get out into the field, and that's always a good thing for a biotech. You always want to, you love them at phase 1, but it's a long ways away. Phase 2, fantastic. You're still a long ways away. Phase 3, you get through that one and things get to the next level, you've got a heck of a shot about getting something out there public. And now, instead of all that free cash flow getting burned, now you might be able to turn that corner and get this better. Any thoughts on this one at all?
Just that, excuse me, they focus on immunological diseases, so I'm absolutely rooting for them. We've got autoimmune stuff going on in my family, so I'd really like to see them bring more and more therapies to the table.
Yep. It's an amazing field. That whole biotech therapeutic field is incredible, and some of the gains that they're making. Obviously, it's a lot of folks that are working really hard, but It is, and it should be. It's a tough go to keep on pushing, and trying to get these things through these various cycles. And hats off to these guys because they've done pretty well so far. They've just got to get one more step, and hopefully they can do that.
So, what's going on in sports?
The sports scene is pretty cool. And I know this is really near and dear to you because the 49ers were playing who? The Detroit Lions.
Detroit Lions.
From Michigan here? Right there. It's exciting, isn't it? I mean, I know that you actually went out. You told me you went to a bar. You wanted to watch it and watch the game and all the rest of that. How did it go? And did you have others there? Because obviously you're in Chicago. You're not in Detroit, man. So how is the fans dealing with you?
So oddly, excuse me. Oddly, I know a bunch of people from Grand Rapids, Michigan, that moved to the north side of Chicago. So I was out with a bunch of people from Michigan. This year, I've gone out specifically to watch 2 Lions games, and the other one was against the Bears. So this one might be on me, folks.
Oh man, no, it's not. I'll tell you what.
It was a nightmare.
Jared Goff and that offense in the first half was extraordinary, right? They're up 24-7 on the 49ers, one of the very best teams I always thought all year, probably the best NFC team of the year. I love Detroit. I like Dan Campbell. I think he does an amazing job. They've done everything the right way. But the 49ers are still the 49ers. And Brock Purdy, people can hate on him or whatever they want. And I know there's a lot out there. The kid's good. And when I say good, he is reminiscent of maybe the Joe Montana types and everything because he was the last pick in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, all of that. Everybody knows that. But he's making $850,000 a year right now. That's a lot of money, but it ain't a lot of money compared to a lot of college kids that are 19 years old that are going to the University of Texas or USC or wherever, and they're making $2, $3, $4 million a year. As some of these guys are absolutely just getting paid ridiculous sums of money, Deion Sanders' son being one of them. So it's amazing, and you got to love the kid. He'll get paid one of these days, but he came out in the second half, and unfortunately for you guys, they just started lighting you up, and they got lucky. Let's not forget, though, there was a lot of luck there too, right? I mean, some balls that were deflected, the one that came off the guy's helmet and all the rest of it, but it shows you the concentration and just how into these games these guys really are, how invested they really are, how much their competitive side is there. And they had an absolutely incredible second half to end up getting almost, I don't want to say they were lucky because it wasn't by luck, but they were very fortunate along the way. Let's say that in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, they did bring it in the second half though. You got to be prepared to capitalize on luck, and they were. So yeah, it was a fun game, even though I was disappointed with the outcome.
Well, and I'm excited because I love Christian McCaffrey. I think he's the best player in all of football. Lamar Jackson did not play very well, by the way, in that game, and the Chiefs looked pretty outstanding. And it was just a complete flip because going into it, Baltimore had all the momentum. They got the home field. They got Lamar Jackson. They've got a great running game. They've got receivers everywhere, right? They've got the defense. Nobody can score on them. Until Patrick Mahomes and company came in there and Travis Kelce's out there just catching every ball thrown to him. He now has some sort of record for the most catches, I think, in the postseason or something like that. It's just crazy. But, all year Kansas City didn't look like Kansas City until you got to the playoffs. And they ran Miami off the field at home. And then they come out there and they go to Baltimore and they're on the road. They're there in Baltimore. Lamar is unbelievable, and they completely stopped him. The turnovers changed this one, Jared. I mean, when you look at Baltimore, the fact that they had 3 turnovers, you look at Kansas City, they had none. That is a game changer, and that's something that's really tough to get around, and they weren't able to get around it, so Kansas City's back in the Super Bowl. I think this is the 4th out of 5 years or something like that for Patrick Mahomes that they're in the Super Bowl. So the people who don't think they're pretty good in Kansas City, they might want to check that.
So who's your money on for the Super Bowl?
Oh, man. I would have been betting against Kansas City, actually, with Baltimore. I really would have. I thought Baltimore really had the team of the NFL this year. But now you look at this and you say, well, this is a great matchup. I love it. I think the money's probably going to be on Kansas City because of their familiarity, although the 49ers have been around a while too. They've been in a few Super Bowls, and they've done pretty well over a lot of years. But Kansas City's rolling, and I don't know if the 49ers can stay up with them if they're really rolling. So I right now would say, and I might change my mind, but for right now, because I think it'll be close, I got to go with Kansas City plus best barbecue in the country, Q39. Been there a million times. Every time I go to Kansas City, man, it's about food for me, Jared. All right, we're going to jump to college because this is a really interesting one for me. And I just want to run it by you just to find out. You and I were discussing this beforehand. But so college football, we know, is changing. There are teams that are going from one conference to another. Everything is changing. I'm not very happy about it because I like the historical way things were built. I still don't like the paying of players in the manner in which they're doing it, NIL money and all the rest of it. But all that being said, you look at the ACC, and you know what? 3 schools joined them next year. Actually, this year, you know who joins them? Well, the ACC, for those that don't really know, is the Atlantic Coast Conference, right? Atlantic Coast Conference. Just remember that. Well, they have Cal, Stanford joining, and last I looked, they're on the Pacific. But anyway, they got some long road trips, man. I mean, this is going to be a very interesting thing to see how this plays out. And the third one is SMU. They're going to be a part of this as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see Cal playing schools like Florida State, and Miami and all these schools from the ACC. They've got a whole lineup. It's going to be great, but it's a lot of travel. What do you think if you're a band guy and stuff like that, but even playing in bands and you're doing it at night and you're late and everything else, you got to fly across the country somewhere. Is it pretty fatiguing, isn't it, man?
Well, at my level, we weren't flying anywhere. You string shows that are a few hours apart. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they better buy planes, man. They better charter jets or something to make those trips, because it'll just wear those guys out.
Oh yeah, they'll be in those charters and they'll be traveling that way, but it's not easy. I can tell you, when I played college, It wasn't that bad because the Big Ten is fairly narrow right there. But I'll tell you what, you get to the pros and all of a sudden you're flying from either Miami or Tampa, you're going to Seattle or Oakland or San Francisco or wherever. Those trips get long. And if you play a night game there and then fly back, you lose like days. I mean, it's fatiguing. But
absolutely. And y'all are big folk in the world of football. I can fit into a lot of small spaces. But
the good news is they usually give you, in a row of 3, it's just 2 guys, right? So you get and they give you all this great food and all this other great stuff or whatever. But the NFL, they make enough money. I think they can afford to be able to take care of the players the best they can. And they do it, that now, as you know, I mean, they're trying to expand into Europe. And that day will come at some point. That's why they're doing all these games in London and Frankfurt and wherever, somewhere over in the European world, because they want to get that audience. And at some point, I don't think we're that far away, because they've had some great fan support all over different parts of Europe, specifically looking at places like London for sure. But I think they're going to expand. I don't know when. And I think they got to be careful, because you don't want the product watered down too much, because we got 32 teams. I don't know that we've got 32 good quarterbacks right now in the NFL. So that's something they're going to have to worry about as they expand in the future. But
frankly, I think that's what that NFL YouTube deal is about. It's about getting easy access to these other markets where they don't have a saturation, like India, like there are a lot of people in India, and even if a small percentage get into football, then that's still a huge market to sell to. Yeah. You're right. Absolutely. It's
like the NBA with China, right? I mean, they've been working on that for a long time, but you've got China and you've got different parts of the world. And absolutely, I think that, you know what, it's going to happen. And we know it's going to happen. So everybody's looking at that. By the way, just so you know, they've kept a lot of those rivalry games together back to the ACC. You've got Cal, Stanford. That's going to be November 23rd. That is a classic. And, the people who don't know it, have never watched it, go back to 1983 and watch the play and the call by Starkey. Unbelievable. It's why those rivalries are so fun. It really is. Well, we really appreciate everybody watching. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time. I think John will be back, but if not, how about this guy, Jared? He's doing pretty good. Thanks,
Next
Jared.
time I'll come prepared. All right. Thanks, Pete. Have a good one.